Okay, we're on the record. Council agenda, Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, Township Council agenda meeting of August 5th, 2019.
Posting of notice. The adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing the notice in the Office of Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building on December 19th, 2018, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record and the North Star Ledger on December 27, 2018, and was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers and local radio stations on December 19, 2018. Council meetings are videotaped and aired on Cablevision, Public Access Channel 21 at 11 a.m. on Sundays, and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Okay, please rise for the flag salute. Peterson, if you would.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. DePiero?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here, sorry.
Mr. Carriffy?
Here.
Okay, also in attendance are Business Administrator Keith Kazmark, CFO Ann Cucci, Township Attorney Jim Lott, and Township Clerk Colette Madden. Council President, we have a quorum. You may begin.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for all of the victims and their families for all of these mass shootings that we've had around our country. Thank you. Okay, upcoming meetings, August 20th, 7 p.m. regular meeting. September 3rd, 7 p.m. agenda meeting. Approval of minutes. Presentations, reports. Okay, mayor's not here, so we have Township Council.
Not at this time.
Well, maybe the business administrator has the report for the mayor.
Well, he has his own. He has his own report.
He has his own. Okay. All right. I have a few things I'd like to bring up, if I may.
Go ahead.
I am really overjoyed that we have trap, neuter, and return policy now in Parsippany, and we're becoming a minimum kill animal shelter. That's really great. It took years and years for that to happen. Along those lines, I would like to have the township consider an ordinance banning puppy mills. There are some illegal puppy mills that bring animals in that are not healthy to sell, and we don't have any now in Parsippany, but proactively I'd like to introduce an ordinance that there are state and federal laws, but the municipality also has a local responsibility to promote animal welfare and encourage best practices in breeding for animals, dogs and cats. And I'd like to request that we consider this ordinance. I'll pass it down. That's my only copy, so make a copy for me, please.
Sure. And I'll note that the administrator and I actually spoke about this about a week or so ago. And I've taken a look at the code, and I think we have a draft that we're ready to circulate after the meeting.
Really?
Yeah.
Great minds think alike. That's great. Okay.
But I'll take a look at what you have too, all right?
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Second item, Vale Road. Now, there used to be signs on Vale Road limiting the truck traffic to 4 tons. And there was a sign at the bridge, the entrance from Montville. When they built the new bridge, they took the sign down. They never put it back. So there's a sign missing at the Montville entrance to Vale Road. There used to be 2 signs at Beverick Road in Vale with the 4-ton limit. When we widened and improved the traffic flow on Vale and North Beverick, those signs came down and they were never replaced. And there used to be a sign with the 4-ton limit at Vale and 46, and that's gone too. So I'd like to request that the administration look into that and replace those signs. It's especially crucial when Route 80 has a an accident someplace west of here, and everybody's getting off and finding and coming through our town to bypass, to back up on Route 80. So I'll leave that with you. Kemper. We'll give Kemper a wash on 2018. They did nothing. But this is now 7 months into 2019. And I would like a financial report of what we've paid, what our expenses were through Kemper, and what revenue we've received in return from Kemper. And I'd like that soon because we have to make a decision about what we're going to do next. One more thing I have is the library, and that's good because she's here. You wear more than one hat. I heard from the Camp Meeting Association that the library is considering closing the Mount Tabor Library. That's what they've heard. Could we get some clarification on what is taking place with that library? I would hate to see it close, but I know you need to cut costs, so could we talk about that sometime?
Council President, through you.
Yes.
We met last week with representatives from the library board, with Jane Beeline, our library director, and with representatives from the Camp Meeting Association, including legal counsel for all three entities, including the township. We are in the process of negotiating a new lease, which was actually started under prior administration. There is some issue of back rent relative to the Tabor Library. We believe that we are very close to successfully reconciling that issue and bringing a new lease for consideration by both the library board and also by the Camp Association. At no time during this process, even though there were rumors out there, and I think the game of telephone prevailed, was there any discussion either by the administration, by the library board, or even by the Camp Association of the library closing? There was some question about whether services would need to be cut in order to compensate for the back rent because how tight the library budget is. But I believe that we're beyond almost all of those issues. We've agreed that there will be additional programming up at Tabor, which is one of the ways that we're going to come to an agreement on the back rent. And I think we'll be presenting that within the next 30 days once the library board can meet, and then those proposals can be brought back to the Camp Association.
Well, that's good. My understanding was that back rent, the Camp Meeting Association was ready, willing, and able to eliminate that years ago, but no one came to them to negotiate. As far as they were concerned, to keep the library open, they were willing to collect $1 a year in rent.
Well, that will, based on the discussion that is included in the new terms of the agreement, the forgiveness of back rent in its entirety, I don't think was ever completely on the table. It was actually one of the first meetings that I had when I arrived here in October with representatives from both the library board and the Tabor Association. And at no time was it complete forgiveness of that rent, although I think we're going to get to that point with providing some additional improvements to the facility in addition to some additional programming up there.
That's good. Okay, you've responded to.
I'm going to go backwards.
Everything
I'm going to go
except
backwards if that's okay.
Well, Kemper is the one. When can we expect the financial report?
At the request of Vice President McCarthy, we will be having an executive session specifically on Kemper, either at our next meeting in August or the first meeting in September. We're waiting on some additional financial analysis. I know Ann has been working on that. I know she provided some information to the Vice President as she requested. But we'll have a full picture for you. It'll be an accurate number. And at that point, you folks can discuss the terms and conditions of the contract moving forward.
Yeah, what was provided was just the null, right? It wasn't the consolidated statement.
No, what I gave you today was my consolidated statement. It had everything in there.
Utility, right.
Okay, but What we've been doing is meeting with them, well, actually having conference calls every week with the financial group that have been very cooperative. And as a matter of fact, we have another one tomorrow to shore up some of those numbers. I think once we get on the same page with the balance sheet, I'll be able to provide a much more accurate number on the revenue side. It's not the expenditure side, it's the revenue side. And I'm pretty confident as to the number I gave you is pretty close. I wouldn't say it's 100% until next week. Well, hopefully next week but we're working one thing at a time. I actually have a whole scenario of everything that went on and where we are and what we're going to discuss tomorrow, if you're interested in seeing that. But we are moving along. I did get all the bank statements. I got all the bank reconciliations. I received a whole year's worth of their financials. Okay.
So that you received them cumulatively, not each
Cumulative.
month? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Well, no, every month.
But you haven't received them every month?
Until now, I received every single month.
Okay.
But I'm looking at today.
Okay.
Okay.
And then through you, Council President, on Vale Road, I'll speak to Mr. Lizza tomorrow, and we'll see about getting those signs replaced.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I just have one thing. On August 19th at 7:30 p.m. at the Planning Board meeting, there will be a presentation on the affordable housing. This will be the same full presentation that was given to the council at one of our previous meetings. At our last council meeting, it was requested by former Councilman Peluso and some other residents that if we could give another presentation on the affordable housing plan. And at that planning board meeting on August 19th at 7:30 p.m., there will be a full presentation for any residents that would like to attend that.
The purpose of that meeting is more than that. It's really aimed at the Board of Adjustment, so that the Board of Adjustment can become aware.
I just want to make sure we don't create any confusion here. There was a separate presentation already given to the Board of Adjustment on the Affordable Housing Settlement Plan. On the 19th, the follow-up actions will be the Affordable Housing Settlement presentation that's been previously given in public to council, I think on at least 2 occasions. And then there'll be a discussion of the housing element fair share plan, as well as the master plan reexamination to permit the rezoning for the in accordance with the Affordable Housing Settlement Agreement. But Councilmember DePiero is correct. There are other affordable housing matters on that agenda.
Thank you. Okay, Township Attorney, Mr. Lott.
Just further to what the Council President had noted, that meeting will be on the website. All right, and I think they're going to try to put the settlement agreement also on the website. It may already be there.
I think it's on there.
Is it already? Okay.
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Business Administrator, Mr. Kazmar.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman DePiero already pointed it out, but it's worth noting again that the Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate, Release Ordinance is on tonight's agenda for review. Hopefully at the next meeting we'll be introducing this. We have a resolution in place that's covering animal control who have already started this initiative here in the township, but we're going to have a formal ordinance that will be presented. Also, at the request of Mr. Lizza from the engineering department, there are some modifications to the road opening permit ordinance on tonight's agenda. Some of that, especially in light of frequent road openings, sets a moratorium for 5 years that any utilities that come in and rip up our roads within a 5-year period of us having repaved the road, if they do open it up, they would have to restore the road curb to curb. So that and some other modifications that came from engineering. And Police Chief Andy Miller wanted me just to remind the public that tomorrow night is our first ever Parsippany-Troy Hills National Night Out. It's being hosted at the PAL down at Smith Field in conjunction with the PAL. So we encourage all residents to come out and participate in that community event. That's all I have.
Thank you. Township Clerk, Mr. Madden.
No report at this time, Council President. Thank you.
Township offices, committees, reports, anything? Okay. At this time, we're going to have a presentation, our annual Craftsman Farms presentation.
turn the lights down. Isabel, could you just hit those lights a little bit?
Thank you. Yep.
There you go.
That's better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to, thank you for having me. I have to look at the screen because I don't have notes, so I'm going to turn towards the screen if you don't mind. Is this on? Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to look around and see. I know we have a large crowd of supporters with us, so I wanted to acknowledge Barbara Weisskell, our board president, here is with us tonight, and several members of our board and other supporters. If you want to raise a hand to show your support. We appreciate you coming out for this tonight, and I thank you for this opportunity as well. It's like it's been a big year for us, so I'm going to jump right in. This is our 30th anniversary, and this is something that we're celebrating, a milestone at the museum, but it's also something worth celebrating with the township, because this means we've been a partner to the township for 30 years. A lot of marriages don't last this long, so I think this is something really important to celebrate. 30 years is a long time to be partnered, and I think it is a successful partnership that a lot of other organizations would have liked to have seen happen for other historic homes. So that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but we've had different events throughout the year, all culminating in our Stickley weekend on October 12th and 13th. We'll be sending out information about that, so I'm going to make a note of it and move on past that as well. Throughout this year, we've been doing a lot of comprehensive planning and planning for the next 30 years. Our board met in a retreat in mid-June to be able to do some of this planning and making sure that our priorities, that we are talking about what our priorities are, that they're aligned, that we set forth a plan for doing these things for the next 5 years. And there's been a really important project that's in progress right now, our new education center, that's actually a building rehabilitation project. It's taking an original building on the property and rehabilitating it for use for the museum, and I'm going to come back to this as well, but it's been a major project for us to take on. It's really exciting. Depending on who you talk to, it's either been in the work for about 5 years or 30 years. It's something that has been long wanted for a long time, and it's really a privilege for me to be a part of it. But as we're doing this, we're continuing our general operations and operating as normal. So that's a tall order. We're a pretty small organization, but we're open year-round. We do 16 weekly tours. That's more than 800 tours a year. And on top of that, there's around 80 programs per year. We serve an average of around 10,000 people, both on and off site per year, and there's a little bit more of our stats there. I'm going to come back to some of this when I talk about our funding, but we have a really active social media page, and there's just always a lot going on to try to build awareness of the property. I threw in a chart of some of our zip code data. I thought you might find this to be interesting. We do a random sampling of our visitors, and this was from a pool of around 5,800 visitors. We sampled nearly 10%, and it's kind of interesting that about 63% of our visitors come from the state of New Jersey, and 36% are from elsewhere throughout the United States. And we have about 1% of our visitors are international visitors, so people from all over the world as well. Of that percentage that is from outside of New Jersey, about 6% is from New York State, another 6% in Pennsylvania. So that kind of gives you a sense of most of our visitors are from the regional area, but people really do come from all over the world to visit. A little bit of background about how we got to 2019. I'm not going to go too far into the history tonight because I have a lot to cover, but if you haven't been to visit before, you can come and hear the whole story about Craftsman Farms. Gustav Stickley purchased 650 acres in Parsippany in 1911 and built what was essentially his dream home there. At the time, he had a multifaceted business enterprise that was built on home furnishings and eventually on building homes. And at the height of his career, he moved to this area to build his dream home. Unfortunately, World War I had a detrimental effect on his business, and he ended up having to sell the property to keep it out of bankruptcy. He sold it to a family named Farney, and the Farneys lived there for 3 generations. The first 2 generations really lived on the property, and the last generation mostly rented it out, and by that time there were only about 30 acres remaining. So what happened during the time that the Farneys lived on the property, Gustav Stickley was famous in his lifetime. He passed away in 1942. He kind of disappeared from popular memory until the 1970s and 80s. There was a lot of interest in Stickley designs and Stickley furnishings, and that propelled interest in Craftsman Farms. There was a lot of effort put into deciding what to do if Craftsman Farms could be saved and preserved and open to the public. The Farney family was ready to sell, but it takes a lot of civic will to do something like this. So throughout the 1980s, there was a lot of work done. There was ultimately a study produced that suggested that the township purchase the property using an open space fund that they would establish for historic preservation, and then pay the Farney family fair market value, and then turn the operation of the site over to a foundation. That's exactly what happened. The Craftsman Farms Foundation then is the Stickley Museum at Craftsman Farms today. So this is how the current history of Craftsman Farms is tied to this period in the late 1980s. The next year, the site was designated a National Historic Landmark. There are only, I think there's around 1,500 in the country. It is an important designation, and it's actually not easy to get. So it's important to maintain our status as a National Historic Landmark, because it really sets us apart from other sites like ours. I also want to point out, 2007, there was a 25-year operating agreement signed with the township. So this is really important because, so you're probably aware that the township collects open space funds, and there's a portion assigned to historic preservation. And so the township has been very generous with allowing us to come and ask for capital funding for projects on at Craftsman Farms property. But being able to go beyond the township to the county, to the state, ultimately we hope to be able to be eligible for federal grants as well. And any funder wants to know that you have a stable relationship with the owner of the property. In this case, it's the township. So the operating agreement at 25 years, and it has a lease accompanying it, is really vital to our being able to go outside the township and request funds for help with preservation projects. So we're about halfway through that agreement, so we're not about to renegotiate it at the moment, but I just wanted to draw attention to it because it really is important. And it goes through, I believe, 2031. So this is what the property looked like when the township took possession in 1989, and here is the same view today. And this is the front of the house back in 1989. And I've talked to Joe Janneron Sr. about what it took to get that rhododendron out. It was quite a project, but here is what it looks like today in the spring. And the interior was completely empty, and the walls were painted white. And here is the interior that visitors see today when they come on tour. It's as close as we can get it to what it looked like in Stickley's era. We still have more we want to do, but we've come a long way. Here is the dining room when the property was purchased, and here's what it looks like today. We have an exhibition that opened in May, and that's what you see in the far end of the room. But this is gives you kind of a feel of what people come to see when they visit the property now. Just a reminder about the property of Craftsman Farms. When Stickley purchased it, he purchased 650 acres. It's 30 remaining. There were 12 original buildings. We have 9 original buildings today. Just to orient you, this is a map of the property in the Stickley era, and this is Route 10. So it kind of gives you a sense of where it is on the property. I'm going to do a detail. The original orchard is where the parking lot is today. So if you know the Craftsman Farms parking lot, if you've been in the parking lot, you've been where the orchard was. So another detail, this is what visitors really see when they come to visit. They come to the log house, which is really the reason it's a National Historic Landmark. There is an annex, which is, in the Stickley era, it was an open-air pavilion, but the Farney family enclosed it. It's where our education room currently is. It'll move later into our new building. There's the North Cottage, the South Cottage, and the White Cottage. There are 3 additional residences aside from the log house. And then there's what was a garage, which is now becoming our education center. It used to be at the back of the property because the entrance to the property was on Route 53. But over time, that entrance changed because there's a railroad that runs right through it. And the railroad bed was raised, and the entrance moved to the Route 10 side, which meant that this building that was really intended for the back of the property is now in the front. So here are pictures of all of these buildings. And then we go to the other side of the property, there where the farm buildings are. There's a horse barn, there's a milk house, the ruins of the dairy barn, which burned in the 1970s, and the calf barn, which is the caretaker's cottage. And I have pictures of those, except for the caretaker's cottage, which is a private residence. So, a little bit about what we do and what we do in partnership with the township. Our responsibility, according to our operating agreement, is in broad strokes to preserve the property. We are essentially stewards of the property, and we ensure that the property is maintained, both the 30 acres and the buildings, and we follow the standards set by the Secretary of the Interior. We also maintain operations, which means basically we make sure the property is open to the public, and interpretation, which means we educate people about it. So interpretations and operations are kind of the same thing, and I think of what we do in two big categories. Preservation is one, and operations and interpretation is another. And in my daily work, they're kind of, I think about them as kind of two gears that always need to be moving. So, and they're mutually beneficial if they're both working. So if preservation grinds to a halt, that's going to affect your operations, because if you're not preserving buildings, people aren't going to come and see the property. And operations and interpretation are a way for people to learn about the property. They drive income, they help us have a staff, and they benefit preservation in that way. So you want both of these gears to be turning. If one of them grinds to a halt, it affects the other one eventually, and both end up stopping. That's just, you really need to keep both going. It's not easy to keep both going, but ultimately the goal is to make the place a community resource. So if both of these operations and preservation are happening, then we really are a resource to the community. Why else would Parsippany want to buy a property like this except to make it really functional and useful in some way? So I'm going to come back to that idea in a minute, but I just wanted to lay out, this is kind of how we think about what we do, and it's very tied to the work that we do every day. So we get a lot of questions about our operational funding. The township does not supply our operational funding. We are self-funded. The township does provide help with general maintenance through the Parks Department and through the Buildings Department, and trust me, I'm very grateful to be able to call Jim Walsh for help when we need it. They do mowing on the property, snow removal. The Buildings Department helps with general maintenance. These are crews that we really depend on, and we frankly would probably not still be here without it 30 years later. It's vital and important, and we appreciate it so much. So other than that, we do, all of our work is self-funded. We pay our own staff, and that means raising $500,000 annually. So we do that through memberships. We currently have around 800 or so members around the country. As you might imagine, about half of them are in New Jersey, but the other half are really all over the country, and some international members. We receive a grant from the New Jersey Historical Commission. This is, like most grants, is restricted. You can only use it for certain things. Most money is not unrestricted. We can't just apply it anywhere we want to. This is used for, directed towards paying our staff. It's enough funding to be able to pay the staff for just about a month, not quite. And the rest of the funding we have to come up with ourselves. The Kiwanis Club has been a longtime supporter of our Family Day program. So these are the kinds of, this is one of the ways that we generate income. We also have fundraising events. I mentioned the Craftsman Gala earlier. And we also earn income. We have a museum shop, we have admissions, educational programs, we do an annual big trip that we lead somewhere in the country. We just got back from that. So these are all the ways that we come up with our operational budget. So we also have capital funding. Capital funding cannot be used to support our operational budget. So this is not a way that we go about paying our staff. We have traditionally, over 30 years, been able to come to the township and request open space funding out of the historic preservation portion of the open space money. We can also go to the county trust and to the state trust for additional funding, and usually it's in cooperation with both, because the county and state trusts require matches. So you might get 2/3 of a project from a state grant, but you still need the 1/3 of the portion. So this is where some combination of capital funding has come from most of these sources. The current education center that's under construction is a good example of this partnership and how it's worked over the years, so I thought I'd use it as an example. This project started a few years ago with a couple of feasibility studies. We knew that we had maxed out of our staff space, we'd maxed out of our program space, we've maxed out of our collection storage space, and we needed to figure out something to do. So we have 9 buildings, but none of them were quite ready for us to move anything over to them. So we came to the township and said we need to do some studies to identify buildings for some of these uses. So there was a study of the White Cottage and a study of the current, what was then the administration building, soon to be the education center. This is kind of an example of how the funding has worked. An architect on our board provided the White Cottage feasibility study at no cost. He did the study for free. with his help, we realized that the White Cottage really was not the answer to our needs. And the administration building study was done with township funds by HMR Architects, and that really gave us the plan that we are currently working from. I presented that plan to the township a couple of years ago, back in 2016, and requested assistance over the next couple of years with getting this project going. Ultimately, the township generously contributed $1.75 million. It's about 63% of that project. The whole project, we anticipate the full cost to be about $2.8 million. The Stickley Museum has come up with 37% of that so far. We have a Morris County grant, and we've also run our own Education Center capital campaign, and we're still fundraising. So all that's really important in terms of money right now, and there's a little bit more of a breakdown here, is that the township and the county funds are covering the hard cost of construction, and the museum is covering the soft costs, the furnishings, the landscaping. So we're still fundraising to do that, but we'll get the building built. We hope to have it completed by the end of the year. So now I'd love to say that we have a new building coming and that solves all of our capital needs on the property, but we do have 8 other buildings. And I have met with Keith and with Ann a couple of times, and they asked me to prepare a 5-year plan for capital needs. And it's a really good project to take on, a little scary when you look at the numbers and say, oh, well, we could really use a couple $1 million right now. But it was a good exercise, and we had some really good conversations around it. And I thought I would just hit a couple of the highlights for you, just talk about what's coming in the next few years. The most pressing thing is really the need for an HVAC system in the log house. It's my understanding that this is a need across a lot of buildings in the township, and I'm not sure how old their systems are. Ours is at least 20 years old. We did some work in 2017 to extend the life of the system because we were aware that the coolant would be phased out in 2020, so next year. Our engineer who designed the system recommended that we make a few upgrades to it and then hold off because he thought that by 2020 we'd be able to buy a better system for the same amount of money, because a lot of the controls are being digitized and there are innovations that would make it a better system. So we've been talking about this for a little while, and we have an estimate on the system that we need. It looks like $100,000 to $125,000 for the system. The estimate that we got was assessed by Donnelly Energy. He's been doing some work for the township as well. They looked at the estimate and said, "This is a really good estimate. This is what we think you need, and we can't really do anything better by it." So I'm confident that we have a good estimate, and we need to move on this sometime next year. And we're talking with Ann and Keith about how to do that, how to proceed. Other capital needs related to the log house. Once we completed the education center, one of our big goals has been to move our shop. So if you've been to the property, you know that this is the annex. This is our current education building. This is where we want to move our shop. You can see that it has this ADA accessible walkway, and it has this big red door that's very visible. We want to direct our visitors to this being the entrance to the property and move our shop. It's actually right next to, this is the log house kitchen, so it's right next to it. They're attached. So what we want to do is, this is our current shop. If you've been in there before, you may not have noticed this. This is actually the hood to the original stove. And it's kind of hard. It's not the ideal retail space, but it's an important income driver. And these are the original cabinets as well, the original kitchen cabinets. So we would like to restore the kitchen. It's something that people often want to come see, is a restored kitchen. So to be able to do that, though, we need to move it into this building. This building we've put off work on it in favor of other projects because it's not the log house. It's not one of the most important buildings there, but we do need to do some work on the exterior and the interior to be able to move the shop into it. So this is going to be one of our big goals over the next couple of years, to be able to figure out how to do this. It will be a big, we hope it'll be a big boost to our retail operations, but just getting the kitchen restored will be important to us as well. So this is the education center under construction. This is the building that was in, we don't have any pictures of the Stickley era, but this is the closest thing we have to what the building looked like in that time. So you can see it's kind of inspired by that building. And this is what the building burned. The lower level was untouched, but the upper level burned in 1970, around 1950. And this is what was built to replace it. This was our offices for quite a while at the museum, and we had to vacate the office to be able to get the project started. But this is the building that we're looking to for program space at the ground level, for staff space at the first level, and the upper level for collections. It will be really transformative to the property, particularly it's a beautiful building that the visitors will see when they first come onto the property. But since we have all this momentum going around this building, one of the other things we're looking to do is to build some infrastructure improvements to the property. We have a parking lot. It's not paved. It's not lined. It's been that way for a long time. It's difficult to utilize. It's difficult for people to navigate it. So I've asked for some help getting the parking lot paved and lined. We think we might be able to tag it onto an existing project. I've always been told that it wouldn't take a whole lot to do it. It just needs to get into the lineup. We also need ADA accessible walkways from the parking lot. So now we have an ADA accessible walkway to the annex building. We have one to the new building, but the parking lot is not ADA accessible. So it's a shame. It would be a shame to get this far and not have the parking lot make this change. So we're hoping to pursue a community block development grant for those walkways. Anyone who goes by our signs on Route 10 know that we don't have adequate signage on Route 10, and there are existing wayfinding signage designed by at the county level. We can use those designs and fabricate and install the signs. Each one costs $5,000 to $10,000. We would love to get. I'd love to get 3 up on Route 10 for people to be able to find us. As you know, a lot of our visitors come from out of town. If they don't see the signs right away and go past Craftsman Farms on Route 10, just imagine trying to explain how to turn around on a jug handle with people who don't live anywhere close to New Jersey. So it really is a challenge to be able to, we want to make sure people stop in the right place and turn onto Manor Lane and get to the property. And it's sometimes difficult to do when you're from out of town. We need additional lighting. We also need other property signage. So we have applied for a grant from the New Jersey Historic Trust for signage across the property, and I'll find out about that in September. And a lot of people wrote letters for that, so I want to say thank you for supporting it. Just additional capital needs. The horse barn is a beautiful building, but it needs stabilization and needs some work done on it. The cost to mothball it is probably nearly as expensive as the cost to put it into use in somehow. So we need to make decisions about what we're going to do. The board toured the building when they were here in June, and like I said, it's a beautiful building, but we're really talking about creative ways that we might put it into use or figure out how to mothball it. We're not sure which direction to go. And the grounds themselves need some work. The pond on the property is in need of work. I have talked to Jim Walsh and Justin Lizzet about it. We need to classify the dam. I'm hoping that there might be some open space money at the state level to be able to do some work on the dam. I know more about buildings, so I've got to dig into that a little bit to find out. But I didn't want to end up with just bad news. So there are some capital needs that are covered. There's a tree fell on the North Cottage back in May, and there's insurance money for that. So that's in process. And the White Cottage, we have about $250,000 to put towards its stabilization. It's been delayed mostly because of other projects going on, but we do hope to get that started later this year. And on the last note, I wanted to just say something about our vision for the future. You know, you don't want to just end up on talking about the financial needs. We do have a vision for the future, and you know, I think a lot about other historic houses around the country, and especially houses that are a little further along than we are. The Gamble House is another arts and crafts site, and it's about 55 years old. And particularly the Frank Lloyd Wright House, Darwin Martin House in Buffalo, New York. There are a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright sites that are open to the public. If you're a Frank Lloyd Wright fan, you're probably a Stickley fan too. Design tourism, people who go visit design sites, is I think stable or on the rise, while history sites tend to be suffering a little bit. The Darwin Martin House is a beautiful site. It's kind of similar in that it's in the middle of a suburban neighborhood, so it's a drone picture of it. You can kind of see that there's some that they have that neighbors nearby too. So you want to think about slow and steady growth that doesn't disrupt the neighborhood, but also is really seen as something that's kind of a gem in your backyard. So that's something we're looking to, how we want to grow and what direction we want to grow in. There's also Gustav Stickley's house in Syracuse that's undergoing preservation, and there is a $90 million project, one person's collection in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's opening the Museum of the American Arts and Crafts Movement. He has a very large Stickley collection. This is going to open later this year. Neither of these are really direct competitors with us, but I think it's important for us to establish who we are and why this place is authentically Gustav Stickley's home and the place that he chose to build his dream home. That's it's something for us to really make sure that we are using as our opportunity and as our main publicity. So in the next 40 years, I want to see us become a real destination. Right now, we're kind of a bucket list place that people who are into design go, hey, I stumbled upon this place and it's really amazing. So we want people to find us and not just stumble upon us. So we want to be a real destination. Doing that is important because we can be a driver for local hotel stays, for dining, for retail. We know that in the visitor data we collect from our visitors that 2/3 of respondents tell us that they're planning to do something else in the area. Dining is most popular, but they are also planning to do shopping and staying in hotels. We can probably get the hotels is only like almost 10%. We could probably get that up. One of our staff members was telling me about a son and mother who came to visit about a week ago. This is kind of a typical story. They were driving across country looking at sites. They specifically wanted to see Craftsman Farms. They stayed in Pennsylvania the night before and drove out early and got to Craftsman Farms very early because they didn't want to miss the first tour. And they had a great visit and were telling her all about it. But I want to know why they didn't stay in Parsippany. Why did they stay in Pennsylvania? So we want to figure out how to package this place as a destination so people will come and think of coming here and spending those dollars here in Parsippany. Doing that means that we're helping to replenish the hotel tax, which is what the open space funds comes from. So that's a goal of this organization. I've been part of some of the town planning meetings, and I know that being a cultural hub is something that we might be able to do for the township. As we move into our new building, the lower level will have an accordion style wall that'll come across the room, and most of the time this space will be set up as a conference room. We know that the libraries are maxed out of their conference room space that people can utilize. It's something that we can offer and share that space with our Parsippany neighbors. So as we get closer to opening the building, we'll have more information about that and how we'll be able to do that. We want to be an educational resource. This is a picture from a day camp that came to visit about a month ago. And we can do more to teach kids about their local history and heritage in New Jersey and life in the early 20th century. And we're also a local park. We can be a park that is in use by our neighbors. I can see us doing more local nature walks, hikes and around the property. I can see us having yoga on the property. These are things we do in partnership with other organizations, but these are the kinds of things that we could prepare to do as we make these infrastructure improvements on the property. So just a reminder that our Fall Family Day is a beloved event on the sites coming up on September 21st, and our free open house is Sunday, October 13th. And that brings me to the end, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present to all of you, and for all of you who came to hear this. I come to a lot of council meetings to when we have change orders on the building, and I know this is a platform that not everyone gets, and so just want to thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. That one on the right.
Scary that you have that you know that, Mike.
Okay.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, engineering report, Edgewood Court reconstruction project. Construction is substantially complete. The contractor is finishing sanitary sewer lateral repairs.
Council President,
Good.
you want to give them 5 minutes to take a 5-minute recess? Let them.
Oh, if they want to head out. You guys don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting? No, go ahead if you're going to head out. You're welcome.
This group that is leaving, just as an observation, out of all of the committees that I've served on for the past 42 years, and most of the other committees, 10% of the people do 90% of the work. That's not true with this group here. They're all 100% involved all the time. Very impressive group.
That's great.
Okay. Moving on, Sandra Drive and Sandra Court reconstruction project. Construction is complete. No council action required. 2019 road resurfacing / curb and sidewalk program. Curb and sidewalk work will continue for a few more weeks. Road milling and paving has started and will continue through the end of August. No council action required. Old Bloomfield Ave Phase 2 reconstruction project. Construction is approximately 70% complete. NJDOT drainage improvements are still being worked on, and all work should be completed in mid-August. No council action required. Drainage issues. Engineering and the Public Works Department are still actively investigating numerous drainage issues that were reported within the last year. The drier weather has reduced groundwater levels, which has resolved some of the problems in parts of the town. DPW crews completed the pipe excavation and subsurface investigations in the areas around Cherry Lane and are continuing to investigate the cause of the drainage issues in this area, but it seems very likely to be due to unusually high groundwater. No council action required. RD Realty Performance Guarantee Reduction, Block 421, Lot 29. The developer has requested a reduction of their performance bond to reflect site work completed on the project. Inspections conducted by this office reveal that a bond reduction is warranted, and all work associated with this bond reduction has been satisfactorily completed and is in accordance with the approved plans. This office has no obligation to the approval of the consent of reduction performance bond number FP0023511. The cash portion of the original bond being held in escrow will not be reduced at this time. A resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council.
Council President, I'd like to know if we can get assurance from the engineer that we're not going to have any problems going forward. I mean, we've had problems on this site, and I just think we should get some assurance before we go forward with that.
I can speak to Justin about that too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bids taken. June 18th, Smith Baldwin House Phase 2 rehabilitation. June 19th, Powder Mill Pumping Station upgrades. To be taken, July 18th, Laboratory Improvement Project. July 24th, lease of public property. August 7th, rental of heavy equipment. August 15th, Smithfield Park Phase 2 improvements. Quotations, proposals, qualifications. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Okay, the floor is open to the public on any issue.
Okay, please come up, state your name and address. You'll be given 5 minutes.
Talk first.
Talk first.
And then you can sign while the next person
Okay.
talks.
Richard Rosenthal, 3 Cambridge Road, Morris Plains, New Jersey. That's my standing line here. I still want to live in Parsippany. First of all, I wanted to congratulate everybody yesterday for the fine program that was put on for Raoul Wallenberg. Very impressive program, and really a pride in Parsippany for what had happened here. I knew Harry Edlinger too, so friend. When I'm here today, Parsippany is known, or we call ourselves the Tree City. Ride through any area of town, with the exception of new construction, obviously, but they're tree-lined streets, beautiful, and people, for the most part, have kept trees on their property. What I'm about to say is not what I expect the town to do, so just listen to the whole thing. Recently, I've lived in Powder Mill for over 40 years now, one of the original section. And we have beautiful trees which run about 80 feet, twice the size of my house. One of my neighbors, without a permit, cut down 9 of the trees. A big construction company came in, or whatever they are, with lumber trucks, and starting at 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening, they cut down trees with the big crane, which wasn't even as tall as the trees themselves. The trees were gone. I later found out that he did it without a permit. The ordinance in Parsippany requires that if you cut down over 5 trees, you are to have a permit. Now, this is not, I'm telling what's going to happen through here, so that's not what I'm going in this direction. The proposal is, so whatever happens with this neighbor, I don't know. It's not the position of this place here. But my suggestion is from now on, in the event a tree is going to be cut down, and certainly these trees were 3.5, 4 feet wide, huge monster trees, that any professional company come in will be required to get a permit, even if it's 1 tree. And the reason is you want something on record. My suggestion would be, unlike going for a planning board or something where you have a site approval, with a cell phone, you take a picture of what the tree you're going to cut down, and at the time you get your permit, and whatever arrangement you'll do this, you submit the picture and it's immediately downloaded on the property. And the reason I want this done, it's not a question of, gee, I can cut down 2 trees tomorrow, have them come back tomorrow and cut down another 2 trees, and have them cut down another 2 trees, or whatever it is. But nobody knows about this happening. And what I'm saying to you, so the simple thing would be, one, he would get a permit. I'm talking about a construction company. I am not talking about an individual with a chainsaw. These are trees that weren't cut down by individual, could be cut down by an individual with a chainsaw. These are professional movers with professional lumber trucks. So the record would remain on record. That's my proposal here. How you work it out, what the correct size of a tree, I'll leave for the forestry department. They will determine whatever they have for this. So I'm not here to say a tree should be X number of feet or Y number of feet. Now, in order to prove my point, I'm asking you one thing. If you would come in on Manor Lane, it's on the corner of Skyview and Manor. Drive by, look at the property. If this is acceptable to you, what you want to allow, that's where it ends, because I'm certainly not going to come here and revisit this to tell you what you should do. If you look at what happened on this property and you agree with me that something has to be done by a professional application, then I think my proposal worked out by your forestry department and obviously through you would be the correct way to go. But unfortunately, this is a blight on the neighborhood. And I must parenthetically report, a few years ago, when one of the Pasquale's sons came into his property, he didn't have a permit, and I believe the town fined him $2,500. Whatever the fine would be, if it is, or they're allowing it, or whatever the story is, the point is, it's like getting a stain on your, it's there. It's obvious, it appears, and money really can't compensate you. But I don't want this to happen again.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you.
Mr. Rosenthal, Mr. Rosenthal, were the trees diseased?
No,
or
they were
weren't?
beautiful,
They
beautiful
were healthy
trees. These were,
Thank you.
I understand, we're 30 seconds. I understand that people in the back, you want to put a pool, you cut down trees.
Right.
I understand, that comes with the property. I understand that you want to, but these are the tree-lined streets that I guess Mossberger, somebody put them in when we moved in. I don't know, we got trees with the house.
Okay.
And trees over time grew.
no. We do.
These trees were
But it doesn't
relatively
address
tall, but they
that issue.
continue to grow even more beautiful.
That issue.
That's our area. This is the original section of Powder Mill.
Somebody cut down
Thank you,
the chain.
thank you.
Professionals.
Is there, counsel?
Permit for that.
I just wanted to ask if there was any ordinance that we have.
So, I'm sorry,
Is there an
Councilmember.
ordinance for
With
or
regards
permit?
to what Mr. Rosenthal has inquired, there is no specific ordinance. I was just speaking to the township attorney with regards to.
Yeah, I was explaining that to Keith also.
Well, yeah, also about what Mr. Rosenthal had indicated, if somebody needs, especially the trees he's talking about, and they came in with a crane, essentially, correct, Mr. Rosenthal? Yeah, well, we also have a crane ordinance now that would
Right.
allow that, but we also need to check to see if it covers that as well. But should they come in, Mr. Rosenthal, with a crane, there is an ordinance now that would require them to come in and get a permit, so we would at least know that.
No, they can come in with huge bucket trucks too, not a crane.
Correct.
And the ordinance
I'm
would
just
not
saying,
cover that.
yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying in the event that they were to bring in a crane, that would. But yes, to answer your question, we have to do that.
Now, Mr. Rosenthal's point is a good one. We should check with Parks and Forestry
Yeah.
with this concept, and anyone large enough to take down a tree that's 4 foot in diameter, they're professionals, okay? And make them get a permit. Let Parks and Forestry see what they're taking down, exactly what they're taking down, and what the ramifications are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially since they're beautiful trees.
It's a good idea.
I agree.
Thank you.
Nicholas Homiak on Night Avenue, Lake Hiawatha. I'd like to back Rich up. I had no idea he was going to be here and say this. Trees at a certain height, I suffered property damage from a contractor that wasn't even licensed. They were a black locust tree, one of the densest woods in nature. It's like anthracite coal. And these guys just let it come down like bombs. It looked like an airplane crashed in my backyard. But the point I'm trying to make, if trees are in close proximity in neighborhoods like Lake Hiawatha and are certain heights or certain types, you should absolutely positively have to make sure that you have a reliable and safe contractor, because what happened to me shouldn't happen to anybody. I was actually trying to enforce the ordinance because the trees were dead, and I wind up suffering even more financial loss than I should have, trying to use the court, which didn't even have all the pictures I gave him, and the judge in Morristown ruled against me for no logical reason that I could think of. So I have to agree with him. It's not just the amount of trees, but the type of tree and the proximity in the neighborhood and the danger it may present. And like he says, making sure you have a reliable contractor. On the other subject, we just passed this plastic bag ban, and it's good, but it's like tip of the iceberg. I hope the Waterview Mall people are not going to fall through the loop up there when they open up them stores. I hope that they're going to be aware about this plastic bag ban, and you know, hopefully they'll be a little more conscious to the environment. There are many products that are coming out now, but they have to be supported and encouraged, that are made from plastics from plant cellulose, not petroleum. And they're not, I mean, people, I guess, are still going to litter, but they won't be as harmful to the environment like the styrofoam. We had a conversation with Mr. Osner in Knoll, and we're going to try to extend the plastic ban at the Knoll utility to hopefully ban styrofoams, plastic drink mixers, and I heard maybe at the PEL too. So Parsippany itself, its own utilities, hopefully will start to set a better example. So I hope that that pans out like it's supposed to. What else was I gonna? Oh yeah, speaking of signs, there's been signs down by the Knoll Golf Course now for a couple of years, and I've been hearing for a couple of years there's going to be cameras down there. And we have littering signs in the town. They either say keep Parsippany clean, with, you know, and that, or $100 fine. $100. It should be $1,000. It might scare somebody. And when are they going to put the cameras up? And I'll tell you what, I've adopted that landscape down there, because it's not just a golf course. It's green acres, river sensitive, so it deserves, you know, a little bit more than a golf course. And I can tell you, it's the same people, the same places, the same trash, or the same trash, same places, has to be the same people. I know that to be true. And if we put these cameras, they're not expensive. We could probably do the community a service by nabbing these people that are that disrespectful to do that there and who knows where, and we could probably eliminate a lot of the abuse that is going on, because there's just a small part of the population that is doing this to everybody. It's ruining it for everybody. So I'd love to see them cameras there, and I would go to court in a heartbeat to testify that beyond a reasonable doubt, if it's that trash and that, and yeah, there's the guy right there.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right, for 30 seconds, well, I'm going to write a letter to the editor about the rain tax, because there's a lot of, it's not a rain tax, they call it something else, but I would encourage the town council, you can Google this, and it's the name of it's called the rain tax, and it's by Raven Santana, who's a investigative reporter. And we can't use our political minds all the time. If we're community leaders, we have to use our rational minds, not our political minds. But this is not a rain tax. It's a tax on large corporate impervious surfaces. And if you use the Troy Brook stormwater study that was done by this town, by Rutgers University of Brota, we have a lot of impervious surface around here with a lot of problems with the groundwater. The water's close to the ground, and all them contaminants getting in there. Whether, you know, how far Parsippany will go with this rain tax or not, but the regular people are not going to pay the people who are causing the problem. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.